He ruled the most feared criminal empire in Seoul. Judges looked the other way when he walked into a room. Rivals disappeared without a trace when he gave the word. For 20 years, Kang Seo had never lost. Not once. Not in business. Not in war. Not in the streets that raised him from nothing into something the entire underworld feared. But on a quiet Tuesday night, sitting alone in his study, surrounded by the faint smell of aged whiskey and cold cigar smoke, this untouchable man sat completely still. Staring at a phone screen. Watching a 12-second TikTok video of his wife dancing and laughing in another man's arms. And around her neck was the necklace he buried his mother with. The one he swore no living soul would ever touch again. He did not scream. He did not break anything. He just stopped breathing for a moment. And in that silence, everything he believed about love and loyalty began to crack. Before we go deeper into this story, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to hear from you. And if you are new here, click that subscribe button right now so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Now let us go back to the beginning. Because this story did not start on a Tuesday night. It started years before that. In a city far from Seoul. In a life Kang Seo knew absolutely nothing about. Seo grew up in the Mapo district of Seoul, in a 2-room apartment that always smelled like damp concrete and boiled rice. His father, a dock worker with dangerous debts and worse friends, was stabbed to death in a shipping yard when Seo was 9 years old. His mother, a quiet and deeply tired woman, spent the next 15 years cleaning hotel rooms 6 days a week to keep food on the table. She never complained. She never cried in front of him. She simply worked. Every evening when she came home with swollen ankles and calloused hands, she would sit beside Seo at their small kitchen table, place her palm on his cheek, and say the same thing every single time. "You will not live like this. I promise you." She died of a heart attack at 53. Overworked, underpaid, and forgotten by the world. Seo held her hand when she took her last breath. The day after her funeral, he removed her gold necklace, placed it in a velvet box, and swore he would never let anyone take anything from him again. By 40, the Kang name carried weight in rooms where governments made quiet decisions. He owned casinos, ports, real estate, and clubs across 3 countries. By every measure, he had won. But inside the glass towers and the tailored suits, there was still a 9-year-old boy from Mapo who had never felt safe enough to love anyone. Not truly. Not until Nicole. He met Nicole Baker at an international business gala in Seoul. She was not there as anyone's guest. She was representing a non-profit focused on economic development between the United States and South Korea. She stood near the window, away from the crowd, holding sparkling water, watching the city lights below with the kind of expression that told you she was thinking something no one in that room would understand. Seo noticed her immediately. Not because she was the most beautifully dressed woman there, though she was. Not because she carried herself with a quiet confidence that made people step back and give her space, though she did. He noticed her because she was the only person in that room who did not notice him. He walked over. She did not turn around right away. When she finally did, she looked at him the way you look at a stranger and not a king. She said, "You have been standing there for a full minute. Is there something you needed?" He had not been spoken to like that in 15 years. He laughed. A real laugh. The kind that surprised even him. Nicole was from Chicago's South Side. She had studied international economics at Northwestern University and spent years building partnerships between American organizations and Asian markets. She was brilliant, deeply warm, and completely unimpressed by power for its own sake. She told him on their 3rd conversation that she did not date men who needed to be the most important person in the room. He found himself thinking about her constantly after that night. Not in the way powerful men think about things they want to own. In the way a person thinks about something that makes the world feel less cold. He pursued her honestly. He told her more truth in 3 months than he had told anyone in decades. He told her about his mother, about the docks, about what the empire had cost. She listened without flinching. One evening, sitting across from him in a quiet Itaewon restaurant, She covered his hand with hers and said, "You are allowed to rest, Seo. You do not have to be at war every single moment." He stared at her for a long time. Then he said, "I do not know how to do that." She said softly, "I know. That is why I am still sitting here." They married quietly 18 months later. A small gathering in a private garden outside the city. He bought her a home near Hanam-dong. He arranged security for her family in Chicago without being asked. He asked nothing of her except honesty. He made her one promise. "I will never lie to you. And I will never let anything touch you." For 3 years, it genuinely seemed like everything was going to be just fine. Now ask yourself something. If you had been Nicole at that moment, knowing what she was carrying inside, what would you have done? Would you have walked away before it got complicated? Think about that carefully. Because the answer matters more than you realize. 3 years into the marriage, something shifted. Nicole had always been warm but independent. Now there were evenings she sat too quietly. Phone calls she took in another room. Mornings she looked at him across the breakfast table with an expression caught somewhere between affection and grief. He asked her once if everything was all right. She smiled, squeezed his hand, and said, "Just tired. Work has been a lot." He accepted that. Because he trusted her completely. Then came the Tuesday night. One of his security men had flagged a clip and forwarded it to his phone with no message. Just the video. Seo opened it at 11:43. A 12-second tick-tock. Nicole laughing, her hand resting on the shoulder of a man beside her. Behind them, floor-to-ceiling windows showed a city skyline Seo recognized immediately. His rooftop penthouse. The one only 3 people on Earth knew existed. And around Nicole's neck, catching the light of the city below, was his mother's gold necklace. The one locked in his private safe. The one no living person was ever supposed to touch. Seo set the phone down. Poured whiskey. Did not drink it. Just sat in the dark and stared at nothing for a long time. When he finally zoomed in on the man's face, his stomach dropped the way it had not dropped since he was 9 years old. The man was Park Dae-won. His oldest friend. The man who had fought beside him in the worst years. Who had sat at their wedding and given a toast and hugged Nicole and said, "You have no idea how long we have been waiting for someone to make this man human again." That same man was now standing in his private penthouse drinking champagne beside his wife. Seo said nothing that night. He went to bed. When Nicole murmured sleepily, "You came to bed late," he said quietly, "Couldn't sleep. Go back to rest." He lay beside her completely still, eyes open, studying the ceiling like a man mapping out a war. The next morning she kissed his cheek before he left. "Have a good day, baby." He smiled back perfectly. Then the moment he stepped into his car, he called his head of security and said 4 words. "Watch everything. Tell me nothing yet." Because Seo understood something fundamental about truth. If you go looking for it in a panic, people hide it. But if you stay patient and give people enough rope, they eventually show you exactly who they are. Within 72 hours his team had accessed phone records, bank transfers, deleted messages, hotel check-ins, and location data going back 14 months. They found a private banking account Nicole had opened under a different name 2 years into their marriage. Small, careful transfers going out regularly. A hotel in Gangnam where she had stayed 3 times during trips she told him were work-related. And then, recovered from a deleted folder, a voice note in Nicole's voice, soft and low. She said, "He still does not suspect anything. He trusts me completely. That is the problem." A pause. Then, "I did not expect it to feel like this." Another pause. "Just give me more time." The recording ended there. Seo listened to it 3 times in a row. Then he sat back and felt something he had not felt in 30 years. Not rage. Rage was clean and useful. What he felt was something rawer. Something close to grief. His men wanted to move immediately. 2 senior lieutenants came to him separately, both ready to handle Nicole and Park Dae-won that same week. Seo looked at each of them and said the same thing. No one touches anyone until I say so. What he did not tell them was the real reason he was waiting. He needed to understand why. He had given this woman everything. And he needed to know what he had missed. So he played the role. He brought her flowers. He made reservations at the Itaewon restaurant where they had their first real conversation. He held her hand across the table and laughed at the right moments. Two people sitting in candlelight performing a marriage, each carrying a weight the other could see but could not yet name. 2 weeks after the TikTok, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, a car pulled up to his private gate. An older woman stepped out. Small, heavy-set, moving slowly with a wooden cane. She told security she had come from Chicago. Her name was Dorothy. She was Nicole's aunt. Seo told his men to let her in. Dorothy sat across from him in his sitting room, her hands folded, her eyes red and tired in the way of someone who had been carrying something heavy for far too long. She refused the tea his staff offered. She pulled a worn manila folder from her bag and placed it on the table between them. She said, "I prayed about whether to bring this to you for 2 years. I told myself it was not my place. But I cannot watch this end the way it is heading." Inside the folder were court documents, death certificates, old newspaper clippings from a Chicago paper dated 17 years earlier. The story described a legal case involving an American import company destroyed by a federal investigation into overseas money laundering connected to Asian organized crime. The company had been owned by one man, Nicole's father, a man named Raymond Baker. The investigation was triggered by financial records leaked from within an overseas network Raymond had unknowingly been used by. The fallout destroyed him completely. Legal fees wiped out everything the family had. The stress put Raymond in the hospital. He died of a stroke 18 months after the case closed. Nicole was 22. She had just started her second year at Northwestern. She finished her degree working 2 jobs, watching her mother grieve herself hollow, carrying the knowledge that her father had not been a criminal. He had simply been used. The overseas network connected to Raymond's destruction linked, through 3 layers of business entities, to an operation Seo's father had run out of the Mapo docks before his death. Seo stared at the documents for a long time without speaking. Dorothy said quietly, she spent 8 years researching this before she found the connection. She came to Seoul for justice. That is the truth. Then Dorothy said the thing she had clearly traveled 12,000 miles to say. But then something went wrong with the plan. She fell in love with you. For real. And she has been at war with herself about it ever since. How do you feel right now? Think about what this man just discovered. He was not just deceived. He was sought out, targeted, and married by a woman who had every reason in the world to hate him. And somewhere in the middle of it all, the plan fell apart because love walked into a space where vengeance was supposed to live. If you were sitting across from Dorothy right now, holding those documents, what would you feel? Rage, grief, relief, all 3 at once. Seo thought about his father, about the docks and the deals and the money that built his empire on top of suffering he was never meant to see. He thought about Raymond Baker, a man he never met, who worked hard his whole life and was destroyed by something he never fully understood. He thought about a 22-year-old Nicole watching her father die. About the 8 years she spent building a plan. And then he thought about that voice note. I did not expect it to feel like this. He thought about every quiet dinner. Every hand held across a table. Every morning she kissed his cheek. And he asked himself the hardest question of his life. Was any of it real? He decided to find out. He called her and arranged dinner at the penthouse. Candles. Wine. The city below them. She wore the black dress he had always loved on her and walked in smelling like the jasmine perfume from their wedding day. She stopped when she saw the dining table. Because on it, beside the candles and the wine, was the manila folder. She recognized it immediately. She sat down without being asked. Neither of them spoke for nearly a full minute. Then he placed divorce papers beside the folder. Then a passport. Then an envelope of cash. He said calmly, if revenge is what you came for, Take it tonight and leave alive. I will not stop you. Nicole looked at the papers. Then at the passport. Then at him. And something in her face broke open quietly. Not dramatically. The way a person looks when they have run out of the energy it takes to be two people at once. She put her face in her hands and wept. When she looked up she told him everything. Her father's death. The 8 years of research. The plan. She told him how she felt the first night they met, that she went home afterward and cried because he made her laugh genuinely and she had not expected that. She had expected a monster. Someone easy to hate. She told him the second year of the marriage was the hardest not because things were bad but because they were so genuinely good, and she had spent 8 years building a wall around her heart and he had simply, quietly, without even trying, walked right through it. Then she told him about Park Day 1. And this is where the story shifted again. Park had not been her partner in the original plan. Park had separately been recruited by a rival faction planning to remove Seo permanently. When Nicole realized this, she made a decision. The TikTok was not a slip. It was deliberate. She staged it to appear on his feed through a location tag his security team monitored. She wanted him furious enough to push her away and investigate before anything worse happened. But his investigation went deeper than she planned. Now both of them were exposed. She looked at him across the table and said, "I came here to destroy something. And I ended up building something I did not know I was capable of. I do not expect you to forgive me. But what I was trying to protect you from is real and it is coming." Seo looked at her for a long moment. The candles flickered between them. He said quietly, "Were you ever really my wife?" She looked at him directly, no hesitation, no performance, just raw exhausted truth. She said, "I became your wife the day I forgot how to hate you." Then, from somewhere in the floors below, the sound of breaking glass. Shouting. The lights cut out completely. Seo was on his feet before the second sound. He reached the drawer beside the bar, opened it, and pressed a pistol into Nicole's hands. She held it without flinching. He chambered his own. Footsteps below. Organized. Multiple. Coming up the stairwell and not the elevator, which told him they had cut the power themselves. He looked at her in the dark. She looked back. And in that moment, all the history between them, the plan, the grief, the love, the lies, the truth, every single layer of it, compressed into one simple fact. They were the only two people in this building on the same side. He said quietly, "Stay behind me." She said, "No." He almost smiled. The footsteps reached the upper landing. And Kang Seo raised his weapon and stood beside his wife. Not because the story was clean. Not because the wounds were healed. But because some truths only reveal themselves in the darkest rooms. What would you have done in Seo's place? After everything Nicole confessed, after reading those documents and understanding what her father suffered, would you have handed her a weapon and stood beside her? Or would you have walked out that door and left her alone to face it? And what about Nicole? After years of building a plan on a foundation of pain, after falling in love with the very person she came to bring down, was she a villain? Was she a victim? Or was she simply a daughter who missed her father and got lost somewhere between justice and love? Leave your answer in the comments below. And if this story reached something in you tonight, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you never miss our next story. It drops very soon. Do not miss it.